Crandell. I am joined by Joseph Harrison there on the screen from Advancing Employment. We're the training and technical assistants for community integrated employment in Georgia. And so we are happy to have you with us today. Just a couple quick notes. This is a part of a 3 webinar series, 2 that will occur next week on Tuesday at 2 and Friday at 2. Tuesday will be our friends from Easter Seals of Southern California. Probably from a provider perspective, the largest provider that I know of doing customized employment in the country. So really hope you join us for that one. And then we'll cap the week on Friday with, and we hope our friends from Rhode Island will attend. We'll send it back out to you for the folks from DB 101. DB 101, if you haven't checked that out, db101.org. Was written into our SWITSI, Subminimum Wage to Competitive Integrated Employment Grant from RSA, and will be tailored for Georgia. Really important, really important. So we hope you join us for those. All right. I also see that our friend Amy Price with the Advancing Employment team, our consultant who works with us with providers and VR counselors and all that, has joined. So thank you, Amy. I think Dr. Rackensberger also will be joining us, hopefully, as well. I have the great pleasure of introducing to you some of just professionals that I absolutely love in Rhode Island, but also get to call them friends. Some of you know that we've hosted Sue Babin twice before. She's a rock star through Advancing Employment. Everybody wants her back. If you were on the session with the 2 moms and self-employment and Sue, you might remember that we went 20 minutes over. No one would get off the webinar. So it was wonderful. So Sue is really, so I tell her all the time, the most creative person I know in human services. Danna Spencer is also joining us, and Brittany Dorrance, both who I think you're going to be so impressed with as well. Great friends. And the real deal. So they're going to talk to you today about being purposeful and intentional with their community of practice. That's why I invited them, right? Because they're not just pretending to do it. And you can look around in our systems and see people who are just pretending and not really making systems change. So I am just thrilled to have them here. You're welcome to put in chat. Any questions, we'll monitor that. We'll have question time at the end as well. If it's a real pertinent question during the presentation, we'll pause our presenters to do that. So without any further ado, welcome, my friends. Thank you for giving us time. Sit back and relax, and let's enjoy the presentation.
Thanks, Doug. All right, so this is our title slide. We have come up with a name called Rhode Island Wins, Workforce Investment and New Solutions, Transforming Lives One Business at a Time. I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Danna and Brittany. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about today is in Rhode Island, we have what we call DD transformation grants. You guys might be aware that we're under a consent decree, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about who the partner agencies are that are working with us under this DD transformation grant. I'm going to show you who's on our team, discuss a little bit about our project purpose, and then the 4 major components of our overall grant: peer and family education, professional development for job developers, how we get involved with employer education and engagement, and lastly, a transformation learning collective that we've set up. Next slide. Rhode Island is a small state, just real quick. You can go anywhere in our state in like 50 minutes. We all know each other. I used to work for the State Division of Developmental Disabilities for 30 years, so I certainly know all of our community agencies. In the adult system in Rhode Island, there are 4,000 adults who have developmental disabilities that get support from about 31 or 32 different community provider organizations. So that's just a little bit of an overview on Rhode Island. As some of you might know, in 2014, Rhode Island was involved in a class action suit with the Department of Justice, who found us that we were violating terms of the Americans with Disabilities Act by paying sub-minimum wages to individuals within some of our day program agencies, and the day programs were definitely segregated daycare centers. As a result of that big class action suit, the state agreed to create a whole new system of individualized services over the course of the next 10 years, so that people would lead regular lives, have access to the kinds of supports that they need, customize employment, and be involved in integrated community experiences. So we totally closed down all of our sheltered programs. The progress, however, in terms of employment for folks with disabilities has been slower than what the Department of Justice has looked to us to implement, as well as our consent decree coordinator and court monitor. As a result of that, sometimes class action suits can result in more money being infused in the system. That's what happened here in the 70s when we closed down Ladd Center. We were the first state to announce closing of all institutions in 1980, but yet it took us 14 years to actually close Ladd Center. But a whole bunch more money became available to the division over the course of that 14-year time period. And that's kind of what's happened since 2014 with this consent decree. The governor and the legislature have allowed us to put more money into our system to address the workforce issues that we have in trying to recruit and train direct support professionals. And we have legislation in right now that is about to pass that minimum wage for all direct support staff will be a minimum of $20 an hour starting this July. So that's where a lot of the money has gone. But what happened, again, with the court not being satisfied with the progress of people in terms of community jobs, as well as being in integrated opportunities within the community, was the state identified, I want to say it's close to about $30 million to put into what they called system transformation grants. And so that happened 2 years ago, and the state initially put the grants out to private providers to allow them to bid on to submit proposals, I should say, that would result in some kind of system transformation with respect to either employment or community integrated opportunities. So that's what the transformation fund was set up to do. And all of the funds have been distributed to, I think it's all close to 28 or so grants that are actually out there right now. Next slide. So when I saw that this money was out there, I worked for the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council. I did work for developmental disabilities for 30 years, but I've been working for the council now for 13 years, running a self-employment project, which I totally love. I saw this as an opportunity to really create some systems change. And I initially approached Skills for Rhode Island's Future, which is not a human service agency. And those guys will talk about more about who they are, but they're a resource for our employers and small businesses within Rhode Island. And so I wanted to do something totally different. So I reached out to them and I said, would you guys be interested in partnering with us along with the Rhode Island Cross Disability Coalition, which is a coalition of individuals with different kinds of disabilities. And so we became the three kind of key partners within our thinking about a transformation project. Also included with us, and what I think is different about what we're talking about here, is the connection between the business community and with human service organizations. So we have our community provider network, which represents our providers. We have our Secretary of State's office, and I'm going to tell you what some of these partners do as I go through my presentation. We have LAZO, which is an organization that is a primary organization for our Hispanic folks in the community. We have the Nathan Markley Show. Nathan is a young man that has a disability that runs his own podcasting agency. Real Access Motivates Progress is a nonprofit organization that helps businesses to think about how to make their workplaces accessible. Communication Works is a major public relations and advertising agency here in Rhode Island. New England Business Associates is an organization from Massachusetts that's helping us with transformation in our goal number 4, which I'll talk about. We're using consultants like Doug Crandell and Keygen Consultants. And we're also connecting with Shop Local Rhode Island, which is a major sales platform for our small businesses. Next slide. So our project team is also diverse. And that's Tanya Blicker, who is the director of the Cross Disability Coalition here in Rhode Island. Myself, Danna, who you have met, and she'll talk a little bit more about herself. Then we have on the bottom row, Brian LaFauci. We hired Brian as our project coordinator. Brian was the former director of the New England Veterans Business Outreach Center. He's a local entrepreneur, has 4 different businesses, a real go-getter. He knows all of the small business contacts in the state of Rhode Island. And Brian has been an instructor for our self-employment project since we started 5 years ago. So we were able to scoop Brian up to act as our project coordinator under this grant. Next to Brian is Paul Willett. Paul is our business outreach liaison under this project, but he's the former vice president for one of our Chamber of Commerce's in Rhode Island. And I think we have 7 of them. And he was also on the state workforce board for over 20 years. So a ton of business connections. Brittany, who you've already met, and Brittany will talk a little bit more about herself later. And then lastly, Deb Moraes, who is the president of Communication Works, which is a major, as I said, public relations agency here in Rhode Island. Debbie knows all of our local we only have 3 TV stations, guys. We only have a couple of newspapers. As I said earlier, we're a very small state. So that's our team. Next slide. What's the purpose of this project? The real purpose is to create different ways that people will have a new way of thinking about the personal futures of people with disabilities here in Rhode Island. It's an opportunity for individuals and their families to make more informed choices about their personal futures, to understand what those options are, and to receive customized supports for the employment choices that they make. It's also an opportunity for Rhode Island employers to be more educated about the value of hiring individuals with disabilities, to think about some creative opportunities such as business within a business, and what the benefits are of building a diverse workforce. It's also an opportunity for our job development staff within our licensed community agencies to learn and utilize economic and workforce development skills for increased employer engagement and connections in building relationships with employers. And lastly, for the DD transformation grantees, those 20-something agencies that received grants, we meet on a quarterly basis to discuss what we're doing and to learn from one another so that we can create a better system of support for people with disabilities and their families in Rhode Island. Next slide. So we have 4 different components to this project. The first is peer and family education. The second is a focus on workforce development for staff of our community agencies, and also to build self-employment, to build selling platforms for individuals that are involved with our self-employment project. The third component is a focus on employer engagement. And the last is the learning collective with all of the grantees. Next slide. So number 1, so what did we do? What are we doing? Well, we've created a speakers bureau. This piece is run entirely by the Cross Disability Coalition. We have a team of 3 education directors, and we've recruited 18 people with disabilities to be part of the statewide speakers bureau. They have 10 different topic areas that they go out to speak with. So what are they doing? So we're going to transition centers. We're going to high schools. We're talking to families. We're talking to folks who receive supports from our DD community agencies about the benefits of employment, about self-employment, about self-esteem, about human rights, about relationships, about public speaking. It's all different topics. Those topics are all free. Every one of the speakers gets paid $50 for every presentation that they make, and they go in teams of 3 or 4 people. So we're trying to get the word out about stuff to raise expectations out there. And then people connect back with us and set up a series of presentations. Some of our school systems are booking all 10 of the topics. And so this started back in February and will go for another 1.5 years approximately. So people can choose any one of the topics, or they can choose a handful of them, or they can choose all 10. Next slide. So component number 2 is what we call workforce development. And this is there's 2 pieces to this. One is a focus on inviting staff from our community agencies to take part in a 3-day training that Doug Crandell does on employer engagement. And it's to get people to think of themselves as part of economic development and workforce development, as opposed to traditional ways of going out to talk to employers about hiring people with disabilities. If we walk in the door and we make relationships with these businesses and talk their language and listen to what their needs are, build a relationship, and then we can take a look at potential opportunities for internships or job openings or business within a business. We also have some ongoing monthly technical assistance with Doug, which Brittany is going to talk about in more detail, and then additional employer interviews. So we're trying to build across the state a hub for this activity. We've already trained, as I said, over 45 people. And we were just talking today that we have touched 70, close to 69% of our community agencies have sent at least one person to the training that Doug has done. So that's pretty high. 70% is really incredible. The second piece of this particular component is building the professional development of staff within our DD agencies to learn business skills to be able to deal with and provide the right support to entrepreneurs with disabilities that are involved in self-employment. We have a few of our agencies that are really doing well with building their own expertise and learning all sorts of business development concepts because they have groups of people that have their own businesses. One of our agencies has 15 folks that are all individual entrepreneurs. So what we're doing is using Brian to work individually with them and help them to think about how they can help each individual business owner promote their business, as well as look at what's the best e-commerce platform and infrastructure to assist entrepreneurs to be able to sell their items or products. Next slide, please. I'm really excited about this one. This is our another way that we're reaching employers. In Rhode Island, our Secretary of State's office is responsible for being the initial location for any new business to be able to register themselves. And after you've been established within a year, you have to submit an annual report to the Secretary of State's office. They have a business development unit within the Secretary of State's office, and they just started over the last 10 years to offer educational series for employers. So I approached them and I said, hey, how about if you guys, because I use them as one of my speakers for our self-employment project. So this is all about relationships, right? Once you know somebody, it's hard for them to say no to you when you ask them a question, especially me. So I asked them, hey, would you guys be interested in creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility series so that we could talk to employers about broadening their workforce? And they said, yeah, that sounds really great. So we've been meeting since January. I have a very diverse committee of people that represent all sorts of folks from all kinds of backgrounds. And we're creating a 3-part educational series. The first part talks all about demystifying diversity. What the heck does that mean anyways? What is it? What are the components of it? What's the right terminology to use? All of that stuff. The second piece is going to be the experiences and perspectives of different employers in Rhode Island who have already utilized and are exemplifying diversity and inclusion within their business organizations. So hearing a business talk about what their experience was, how it's changed their workforce, is going to be a whole lot very beneficial for businesses to hear from other businesses directly. And then part 3 is what are the available resources to businesses? What are the tax incentives? What are the other kinds of incentives? We just have a new grant that's available for businesses right now. It's a $5,000 accessibility grant to help businesses to make their workplaces more accessible. And so that's a new incentive that we have here in Rhode Island that I don't think a lot of other states have. And then the last part of this piece is employer recognition. We have a major newspaper in Rhode Island called Providence Business News that all of our businesses connect with. It's really probably the single newspaper, and fabulous stories and information. And every year they run a diversity series in the fall where employers get nominated, and then they create a special newspaper just on this diversity recognition awards that they do in the fall. Some of our community providers run their own recognition of employers. And so if you're an employer, would you rather receive a plaque from the Rhode Island DD Council, or would you rather receive a plaque from a major business newspaper and put that on your wall? I think most businesses would prefer to get a PBN award versus a Rhode Island DD Council award. And so we've managed to convince Providence Business News to open up their process. I even have them as a committee member on the Secretary of State's activity that we're doing. And we just started developing a quarterly newsletter that's going to focus in on different employers that have been involved with this project and kind of highlight the things that they're doing so that we can share that information with other employers. The next slide and the last slide is part 4, which is a transportation stakeholders learning collective. And what this is any one of the agencies that have a transformation grant, we're bringing people together. When the money first came out for this, everybody was all over the place. And just like with locations throughout the country, really good things can be happening and you don't know about it. And so, excuse me, we thought it would be a really good idea if we wrote into our proposal that we would coordinate quarterly meetings with all of the DD transformation grantees to bring people together so that we could talk about issues, identify some challenges, brainstorm some solutions, make better collaborations, highlight some of the activities that's going on, bring in people from other states to address some of the areas that we need technical assistance on. And lastly, we're doing some podcasts by entrepreneurs with disabilities to show some of these different transformation projects and what people are doing. So though, I think that's my last slide. Yeah, the last slide will actually have my contact information on it. So with that, I want to turn it over to Danna and Brittany to kind of pick up and to talk about how we are collaborating together with the piece that they're handling through this project.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue Babin.
And you know, everybody calls me that. It's like one name, Sue Babin.
It's our endearment for you.
Everybody does that. So it's good. It's so good.
Okay, I actually have some sharing power here. So thank you, Joseph. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get our presentation started. Danna, if you want to kick us off and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Danna Spencer. I am the Associate Director of Client Services here at Skills for Rhode Island's Future. We will talk a little bit more after Brittany introduces herself about the agenda and who Skills are and what it is that we do. But I just wanted to highlight, because my title has the word client in it, that I'm making you all aware that when we speak about client or when we refer to client, we are talking about our employer partners or our businesses here. So not necessarily the folks, the candidates that we serve. Clients for us are our business partners. Okay, Brittany, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Brittany Dorrance. I am a client services associate with Workability through Skills for Rhode Island's Future. So Danna and I have a very similar job, very different titles, but really the same goal. So excited to continue to present to you guys today and really lead off of the good work that Sue has already done. Not Sue Babin, but Sue. Yeah, so our agenda for today, we're really going to go over, who Skills for Rhode Island is, what we do, give you a good overview so that you understand, what our resources are and really why we were thought of in the first place for this project, why we're valuable in that way. Then we'll give you an overview of our workability initiative. That is really the department or vertical that Danna and I sit in. And just show you really where that stemmed from and how that leads into transformation. We'll show you a little bit of our referral sources and talent pipelines so that you understand our community partners and really how we've continued those relationships to really work with this project. And then an in-depth look at that transformation project that we discussed and a little bit of a demo of really what we're doing for the career coaches in Rhode Island and how we continue to collaborate in Rhode Island. And then just our ongoing project outcomes, some of the successes that we've seen, any barriers, because obviously this project is still ongoing. So just trying to work out those kinks or, see what's going well for us. And then of course, our contact info. So I will hand it off to Danna to give you the overview of Skills for Rhode Island's Future.
I get the fun slide. So I'm not going to read through the entire slide, but I do want to focus on the top piece of that and the definition of who we are and what we do. So we are a nonprofit, just so that that's understood, a nonprofit workforce intermediary dedicated to building talent pipelines with a focus on the underemployed and unemployed job seekers in our state in order to meet the demand, any demand of a local business. So, just to kind of give you a moment to sort of look over the mission, the vision, our values, and the services that we offer, quick peek at that, and you might say, well, how is this not a human services organization, right? Our founding executive director was very much focused on making sure that the unemployed and underemployed and those other folks in our state that are looking for upward and meaningful economic mobility, that we address those folks that have any barrier to employment. So in the foundation of the work that we started to do here at Skills for Rhode Island's Future, I'm going to go and say 6 years ago, long before I joined the team, the services and the supports that we were providing to employers were based on the notion that we wanted to make sure we gave our job seekers who were marginalized access to the same opportunities that any other person had walking through the doors and looking for employment. So the focus was not initially had on our job seekers who were identifying with any type of disability, specifically intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is where we're headed from here, but really to address the needs of any marginalized or any population of job seekers that had barriers towards upward economic mobility. Some of the services that we offer are in direct hire. This is what you would kind of typically think of as just a talent placement organization. We have our industry verticals that we capture and build candidate pipelines for in manufacturing, in healthcare, professional services, and in fact, workability is in itself its own vertical. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but direct hires represent about 85% of the work that we do here at Skills for Rhode Island's Future. We also have a career services division. Those are where all of our training programs, any training initiatives, our career coaching staff who work directly with candidates, in terms of, career development or creating their career path, self-empowerment, resume writing, all the things that you think about when you think about getting folks kind of prepared, right, to jump into the world of work. Our Empowering Interns is a high school and college internship program where we work directly with our employer partners and try to get some other employer partners onboarded to offer internships to our students, again, in a lot of the major industry verticals that we talked about, plus. We typically are working with over 180 employer partners at any given time, and that number can grow exponentially when we're doing our outreach to provide opportunities for our interns. In that particular case, Skills for Rhode Island's Future acts as the employer of record, again, to take away all concerns, to mitigate any barriers in order to provide interns with these opportunities. Our Small Business Hub is one of our newest offerings and initiatives, and something that we might touch upon a little bit later to talk about how Sue Babin and her group has engaged with us in that model, again, to potentially give support to some small business owners from the disabilities community, and of course Workability, where we'll end, which is our inclusion initiative here at Skills for Rhode Island's Future, and what I attempted to kind of create as my boots hit the ground 3 years ago, and service to our candidates, and obviously equally in service to our employers. So I'm going to give it back to Brittany.
Thank you. And so as Danna had just said, a little bit about Workability. We are a diversity, sorry about that. Moving on me. So we're a diversity and inclusion initiative that spotlights Rhode Islanders for their workability and not their disability. And so Workability was created because we saw a problem in the labor market that we wanted to solve. That problem being here, as you can see, that about 50.6% of Rhode Islanders with disabilities are not participating in the labor force. I read those backwards, I'm sorry, as I changed the slide. 11.5% of Rhode Islanders identify with a disability, and the problem is that 50.6% of those Rhode Islanders identifying are not participating in the labor force. We did get this information from the DLT website, from their labor market information, and so we do suspect that there is a difference in numbers, that they're probably higher, but as many of you may know, a lot of times states have difficulty getting an accurate count, or getting a lot of people to respond to some of that information. So that was the problem. Obviously, Workability was created to be part of the solution. So I'll read a little bit off the slide and then explain what some of it means. So the first part of the solution was that the Workability team at Skills for Rhode Island was created to offer free consultative services to organizations in Rhode Island. And when we say free, that really means that our consultative services are free to the organizations and to employers. As Danna had said before, 85%, which is the bulk of the work that we do, is direct hire placement, and that is also funded through the Department of Labor and Training. The second part of our solution was to have a team of hiring professionals that'll carefully consider the hiring needs of partners, collaborate on establishing customized hiring initiatives.
And that was me at the beginning. So we were a team
that was
of
just
one.
Danna.
But you'll find out a little bit more about our team as it grew, thankfully.
Yeah. And so when we mention customized hiring initiatives, we're really highlighting our process of creating an employment relationship between the candidates and our employer partners that meet the needs of both. It's definitely different, finding an opportunity in direct hire, as well as, heavily accommodating an opportunity and fully customizing an opportunity. And we really strive to do all of those depending on a candidate's need, depending on an employer's need. So that's where that collaboration piece happens. Our client services team holds those relationships. The Workability team is introduced into those relationships. That would be Danna and I through a warm lead. Our team in Workability, Danna and I, also create business partner relationships of our own. So our Workability team overall was structured in a way that allows each team member to have a focus. And that's, again, where Danna and myself come in, and we reflect what our client services team does. We facilitate the employer engagement piece and hold the business relationships. And the third part of our solution really brings in the other part of our team. which I'll discuss. So we, through collaboration with our community partners and providers, our staff will facilitate accommodation and support needs in service to our employers and candidates. So we build the relationship, we create the opportunity, but the agencies and organizations provide the support. And this is a collaboration between all parties involved. And this is where our supportive employment coordinators sit, Christina and Meredith. They provide support on the candidate side, connecting with the candidates and their agencies or support providers to identify their needs and abilities and really help them through that job development piece.
I think what's important about this is that, being a business-driven solution, that we have a team of folks that, we are very busy and we work very fast, and we are probably, I would imagine, as overwhelmed by many of you who work in, workforce development and who are working more directly with candidates and job seekers that are looking for employment. But that is our dedicated effort. So my time and Brittany's time is dedicated solely to those business relationships. And I know that it's a balancing act for a lot of the folks that are, on the agency side and the provider side of that equation, which is also then why we have two dedicated, what we call supported employment coordinators, but they're really career coaches to work, again, very effectively and very closely with those providers that are supporting each of the candidates who come to us for that service.
Thank you. And I just want to point out here that we do sometimes have some hesitancies sharing this solution as is, which is why I break it down and explain it. I just want everyone to understand that the solution was really crafted and approached in a way that that it's easy for an employer to understand. And we do that by using more business language terms such as inclusion, accommodation, innovation, unmet needs, business solutions. Those are all words that obviously mean a lot to us and something that we can really relate to a business on. And then these icons at the bottom here, if you want to give them a quick look over, they're really the incentives we discuss with an employer when we're engaging them and signing them on for a partnership with us. So some things that they can expect from us and how we can help. So moving on to our workability pipeline by referral source. Again, this piece is important just to show you some of the collaboration. It really shows a little more of the foundation of where we started to get into transformation. So this graph again shows us where our candidates and job seekers are referred from. You'll see here all of the medium blue is really all the BHDDH and ORS, Office of Rehabilitation Services, which we all have. Those bars in the graph represent PSEP and a small pilot. So PSEP was a project that a lot of us worked on together. I was actually on a provider side at the time, trained by Doug, the one and only, and in collaboration working with Danna. So I get to see really both sides of that project, which is wonderful. And so those are really the foundations of workability. And then they came about as we engaged in this process with 3 major employment support providers in that PSEP project, beginning in 2020. This was a project that really looked into the approach to person-centered supportive employment through the lens of discovery and customized employment outcomes. And that really sparked some ideas from there. So our other providers identified with the light blue in the graph are our candidate flow from any other provider agencies and our CPNRI member organizations. So as our effectiveness grew, it really garnished the interest of other stakeholders, and we were able to grow our services and secure additional funding streams. You'll see that the dark blue bars are the self-identified bars. They represent a group of folks that come to us through our job board at Skills or by walking in from the street. So you can see actually that there was a change here in Skills in 2021. We added a section to the candidate enrollment process where job seekers coming to Skills could request accommodations, and that was not an option before. So you can actually see during the first quarter here in 2021, there was an uptick in, that's when we added that disclosure, and there was an uptick in the self-identified referrals. So that process continues to be very successful. We work very closely with our intake team so that their team on the front end has the ability to spot and support any candidates that may have an additional need for support and then can refer them over to us at Workability. And then just a little fun note to add, the DLT did take notice of that change where people could request accommodations, and it encouraged them to add a section to their enrollment process as well, which has been helpful again for a lot of that data that they are tracking. So Danna, if you want to get us started on this slide, that'd be wonderful.
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot to say except that I have been in the same realm professionally with Sue Babin for, and I'm going to call you Sue Babin, for like a good 30 years. I always admired what she had done and followed along with her work. So when the call came through and we started talking about this particular collaboration, I could not have been more thrilled. And, you know, I essentially promoted it and jumped in with as many feet as I had, you know, to really get moving on this. The work that I had done for, you know, 32 plus years in my career history was with a provider agency as well. And I uniquely understood all of the concerns, all of the barriers, all of the difficulties it is when you are looking to sort of professionalize what it is that you're doing and not really having the same kind of support, financial support, professional support, and stakeholder support really to move it along. I knew that Sue had the gravitas to do it. And so we were really excited to be partnering with her, with the RICDC on this project. And I'm going to turn it right back on over to you to talk about employer engagement trainings, Brittany.
Yeah. So, you know, we had started to dive a little bit into the employer engagement trainings that Doug had come to facilitate for us. Our entire team here at Skills has gone through the training. I, again, was on a provider agency side when I started the training, very quickly moved over to Skills, having a great relationship with Danna, a professional relationship, and able to move over to this side and see things through as the project continues. So Doug's training really influenced our engagement approach. And our foundation was really already set by the demand-driven nature of our company and wide range of business and consumer resources, including that robust talent pipeline through those industry verticals that Danna had mentioned before: manufacturing, healthcare, professional services, Workability being their own, and special projects. And so after we had gone through employer engagement trainings, we really wanted to see how this would, you know, come through, how we could continue to track numbers. Luckily, we have our own management system where we're tracking all of our employers, all of our outcomes, anyone submitted for a position or opportunity. And so we came in with that piece of information, and we continue to track a lot of the outcomes that we're seeing through the transformation project. So we'll share some of those goals and metrics with you here. I'll let Danna speak first on Ready, Set, Workability, and then I'll go into some of the numbers here that you see on the screen.
Yeah, so something that is just mentioned on the slide, but not really captured in any really fun and compelling way. But we are just beginning the development of what we are looking at as I hate to use the word work readiness, because obviously in customized employment, you know, we're really not kind of waiting for folks to get ready to go to work. But it is a workforce development training, boot camp style training, specifically aimed at the type of candidate or the candidate profile that was meant to sort of benefit from this transformation, this employer engagement, and this approach to businesses. So we're looking at a candidate profile of, you know, 18 to 40-year-old folks that may identify with an intellectual developmental disability, neurodiversity, so on and so forth, that are really kind of at that point where they want to work. The boot camp style training is right now in the course offering looking at a 20-hour-a-week commitment over a 2-week period. We have it designed so that we are engaging a number of stakeholders for presentations, for learning, looking at incorporating some type of strengths assessment for folks, elevator pitching, so on and so forth, in order, again, to give candidates a little bit of a boost or a leg up to raise their expectations about what it is when they get out there and interface with businesses and vie for opportunities out there in competitive employment. So we really want to skill them up in their expectation, but also in their foundational skills and their actual, hard skills, in order to give them a competitive edge in what we are looking at in designing around customer service training that crosses all verticals. So again, hospitality and retail, what does customer service look like there? Professional services, admin and office, what does customer service look like there? And so on and so forth. So we have shopped it out at this point and shared it with a number of employers, which I want to stress, we think is very important. There's no use in designing a workforce readiness training and training up individuals if employers don't have buy-in and they don't understand or can see the value in what it is that we're putting out there, and they're not committing to hiring those folks. So literally in my relationships that I have with some of my employers, I've shared, our draft block schedule with them, asked for some feedback and some comments. And the end goal is, if we put somebody through this training, would you hire them? Go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Danna. Really excited to see that into fruition. Anyway, so we have a lot of these metrics and goals. Obviously, Ready, Set, Workability was one of them. And so that's the next goal that we're working on while we continuously work on the ones you see here on the screen. So this first one here, employer status, really our goal was to make an initial outreach to 50 businesses. As you see, we're at 48, so 96% of our goal is complete, which is wonderful. And then of those 50 businesses, we wanted to see at least 25 of them commit to hiring anyone with IDD or identifying with IDD. And so far 13 have, so we're at 52% of our goal complete there. Our professional development meetings, again, those coaches that are coming over from the employer engagement training, we want to make sure that we're continuing to reach out to them, to be a resource to them, to provide them with resources, and to mentor them and coach them along through the process of engaging employers and just helping them. We've created a hotline for them so that they can reach out to us at any time. And so these monthly coaching calls are for just that, where Doug will come in and Doug will give his segment. We call it, Ask Doug. And then we'll really break it down and see what everyone has been doing to engage with businesses and where they're at and if they have any questions. So obviously our goal is 12.
To ask Dapper Doug because of his outfit.
Dapper Doug.
Yeah, I'm going with Dapper Doug from now on.
And so obviously our goal is 12. That's because we've got 12 months. We've hit 4 of them, and our next coaching call happens to be next week. So that number will quickly change to 5 and a little over 25%. Moving forward, our employer engagement sessions here on the right, really those numbers, we wanted to make sure that we were educating these employers on what it is that we're doing on the other side, and making sure that they're aware of what supported and customized employment is, as well as what they could be doing to participate, whether that's a job shadow, internships, and obviously the ultimate goal is that placement. Obviously we want to see these opportunities full circle. And so we have our goal was 12. We have completed 25. And so that's a wonderful, overachievement, but really instead of having just one employer at each of those sessions, there have been multiple at some of them. So we've reached 39 employers with those sessions. So as I said before, we continue to track and outreach to these businesses, specifically from the trainings. These coaches had to go out and engage with these businesses the same way that we do daily. And like I said, we're following along with that. If there's any reason that one of these coaches can't continue with a business, whether they don't have a candidate for it, or they just don't have the time, or it's not in their area, then we just ask that they move us into the connection. and either they'll follow along while we kind of take over, or we can continue to engage with that business on our own so that we're not just losing a connection, and we continue to provide the business with their needs if they have them. And that way we can also, again, share with that community that we've made those connections, any opportunities they might have for others who do have candidates to fill those opportunities.
This will all make sense when Brittany goes into the demo.
It will. So I'm going to do a very quick demo because I know that we are running out of time here. I just want to show you another way. Let me know if you can see this on your end.
You can see it.
We can.
Awesome. So we have created, if anyone has used Microsoft Teams, we've created a Microsoft Teams channel for all of our coaches and their agency support. So any directors and any of the bosses at our agencies, anyone who has gone through Doug's employer engagement training has been invited to this channel where they can look at all of our opportunities, whether they be job shadows, tours and informational interviews, and any current open positions. So you'll see I have a job posting for housekeeper positions. So we want to make sure that people are engaging. We've made a way that they can easily submit interest in that opportunity. I've created a form that they can just show interest, where we then reach out and connect with them. And obviously, if their candidate is not already connected with us, we make sure that we do that, obviously, for confidential reasons, and making sure that we can exchange that information. One of the more important pieces that I really want to focus on quickly are the files. So we have added a lot of resources. So every time we have a coaching call, we have our notes in there. We have put in all of these resources for these coaches and continue to add more. So one of them is an elevator pitch template that really helps them to identify themselves, and not always as right off the bat as from a provider agency, but really identify what their goal is in meeting a business need and the candidate's need, and figuring out how to pitch that to an employer. As that's not always the way that it was approached previously. So that's a very helpful tool. If they have an informational interview, Sue has created a wonderful template where they can write down all the information and identify anything about the environment that they noticed, anything about the tasks and unmet needs, possible business within a business opportunities. And then Sue also created a wonderful document of Rhode Island business resources and support. Again, any grants that could be available to businesses, like Sue mentioned previously, would be on that document. And then lastly, just our one pager. Danna, if you want to speak on that a little bit, I will drop it in chat.
I actually did just drop it in the chat for you.
Cool, thanks.
So, not a big deal. But what we were attempting to do with our one pager was try to bring in, well, obviously to give the job coaches, job developers, and the leadership staff from Sue's team and ourselves a way to kind of introduce or share information on the project without necessarily calling it a project. To talk about, customized and supported employment without mentioning the disabilities word. Really to look at taking Skills for Rhode Island's future and all that we do bring to the table as a business and demand-driven entity, and incorporating the language of transformation, inclusion, and all of those kind of buzzwords, I think, that businesses that are palatable for businesses, that businesses would recognize, as opposed to again, selling it as a disabilities initiative or some hiring initiative for people with disabilities.
And just one last piece there, we post about those opportunities on that channel in real time once we make a strong connection and confirm commitment from a business. And then, that way we're really helping these agencies and candidates and their support providers see the demand-driven nature of working with a business, because it's not, it is sometimes really quick. And so it does need a certain amount of attention on it. And then this slide is very brief. Danna, I'm just going to let you take this one away.
Yes. I knew that we were going to run short on time. So we just kind of wanted to just, get a few thoughts up there. and you know, and kind of leave that on screen in order. I know many of you would probably easily recognize that, you know, where the successes and where the challenges fall here. But I think that, you know, one of the pluses of engaging in this collaboration with Skills and RI is that we are and have been since the beginning a very data-driven organization. And we know as a nonprofit, as many of you folks know, that the money comes when you demonstrate success. So it's really important that we, you know, kept track of who it was that we were serving, how many, you know, businesses we were talking to, and so on and so forth, in order to make this, you know, potentially fundable and a sustainable model moving forward. So, you know, what we have found is that our agency partners in this work are a little bit behind us in terms of, you know, being adept at working with and dealing with and collecting data, but also some of the technology challenges. You know, the transformation team channel itself, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy for us to kind of garner folks' attention and get folks involved and participating in that community of practice. We all know that disruption can cause a little bit of trouble for some folks. And so when you're dealing in systems change, which is a really big thing, and you're talking about transformation, which we know is hard, we anticipated that there would be a little bit of resistance or maybe a little bit of pushback, or maybe just some folks scratching their heads going, what the heck is this? So there is a little bit of a learning curve in terms of, you know, engaging again our stakeholders and our partners, and especially those folks that are doing the hard work, boots on the ground, in order to get them engaged with us and adopt the approach. We all know transportation's an issue. We all know that where candidates live and their location and proximity to where we would like to see them work or where they would like to work has been a problem, and that continues to be a little bit of an issue for us as well. But what we have seen is that even with the barriers, even with the challenges and the struggles, that this is most definitely a continuous learning for us. We stop, we think for a moment, we talk with our partners, we reflect on the feedback that we're getting, and we quickly look to transition and pivot to another way that we think might remove a barrier or might help. We have had some pretty decent outcomes. And for us, even though there's all this really fancy, you know, we've got a lot of fancy and sort of interconnected goals where we are looking to build, you know, this community of practice and build awareness. Ultimately for us at Skills RI, and probably for many of you, a positive outcome is a hire. So for us at this point, I think I didn't actually look at the data, but I think that as a result of some of the outreach efforts that we have done as a team, we are currently looking at least 4 hires from the employer connections that we've been able to, you know, make and establish and grow. And so that's something that we're really excited about and proud of, obviously. And we think there are probably more positive outcomes out there for us to capture. But again, it's, you know, that struggle of engagement and ordering, you know, in order to really pull some people out, get that trust built, have them share with us so that we can mentor and help them move their process along and get their own really good positive hiring outcomes. And that's about all I got to say about that slide. Oh, unless you want to talk a little bit about our guy over on the right side, that was Cameron, one of our job seekers who we had engaged. Actually, yeah, we had connected with our partners over at Rhode Island Nursery Landscape Association and connected him to a training that they were offering for what I believe had been really, I don't know that they had ever served anybody with an intellectual and developmental disability in that training. And so through our partnership and a relationship with the folks over at RINLA, they opened back up their recruitment. They grabbed this kiddo and threw him on board, and it ended up with, I think it was after he completed the training, about a month later, we worked with those folks in order to do some outreach to their employer partners, and we were able to assist him in landing a job with one of the parks and recreation departments here in Rhode Island. So it's been just a wonderful ride. And there's
my friends, I can speak, I think, for everybody that you have done such a fabulous job of putting so much in that you're doing into this presentation. I've been getting texts. I don't know why people don't put it in chat, but I've been getting texts. There's a lot of chat there. We've recorded this. It'll be archived. We really only have time for just brief answers on this. I put it in chat so any of you can jump on it. And I think we've heard this before, Sue and Danna and Brittany, but it's many of us have done informational interviews and training like Acre, but how are you and providers incorporating that into everyday schedules? So just any tips there, and we'll say goodbye, though we don't want to.
Well, I mean, Sue might be able to speak to that a little bit more than I can. I mean, Brittany and I both employ the practice to fidelity. So what we do as well as we're out and we're visiting and we're meeting with employers and trying to uncover their unmet needs, we also come from a position of having an arsenal of resources at our disposal. So we look to try to figure out a way, really to incorporate, again, this practice and how can it be adjusted and meet what would typically hiring agents and other employers would expect, right, from a demand-driven organization.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're on mute. Yep.
I think quickly, the other thing that we're trying to do is to get the staff that are trained through the presentations with Doug to understand what their relationship is with the business. Publicize that business, become a customer of that business, take a cell phone shot of yourself at the business, post it on Facebook. That's a long-term relationship that people need to build so that it's not just a one and done type of thing. And that's something that has resulted in some really great connections with people. But the thing that I want to, just quickly mention is that when we had been, as we have been doing job development throughout the years, usually a staff person from an agency, if they went to an employer and they didn't have a candidate that fit that position, or the employer didn't want to hire that person, that was the end of that. That was the end of the relationship. That was the end of that. What we're trying to do with Skills is to create a centralized hub for job referrals, so that if I go out on my candidate and it doesn't work out, I'm passing that over to Brittany or Danna, and they're putting it in the channel so that everybody can see it. You really couldn't get a flavor for that because we're quickly going through this stuff, but that's something that is growing, and we want to make that a scalable thing within the whole state. That's our goal. And to be able to say that, Doug's, almost 70% of our agencies have sent at least one person, 70% that do employment supports, to the employer engagement training is really fabulous. That doesn't include some people that we've included from our high schools or our transition centers. So we're trying to really build this training out so that it gets visibility. We're small enough to do all this stuff, but you guys that are in big states, you could do this within a region. I mean, this is definitely something that could be modeled by anybody. So we're really excited about it. And just the business connections by hiring people that come from the business community, not human services, to build those, relationships back and forth so that we understand each other better has been extremely beneficial. So really a big shout out to Paul and Brian and Deb for, just the connections that they have. And the other thing that Deb does is publicizing this stuff, getting the local newspapers on the news, all that stuff is like really important. It helps the community to see folks with disabilities as contributing members of our workforce, or that the businesses that they have as entrepreneurs as just like anybody else. So it's really powerful stuff.
And just one more quick thing, Doug, I know that people probably want to jump off, but Skills for Rhode Island's Future was actually incubated and modeled off of the original, the parent company, if you will, Skills for Chicagoland's Future. And there is an initiative with the Skills for organization to spread this work to 12 new states. So that is something that everybody is very excited about, and it will happen eventually. And so I would say, you know, that one of the things that I think is making this so successful is the fact that, you know, that Sue has partnered with us because we are a business and demand driven entity. And I think that that is really key. We have resources that human service organizations and provider organizations just simply don't have. We have the time and the resources that they don't have.
My friends, this is an entire journal article, case study in something I hope the few folks that are still on and then folks who will view it in archive totally understand. And this is the true spirit of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, of bringing together. You can do customization, you can do DEI plus disability, as these three wonderful professionals, wonderful women have said, while operating on the demand side. It's a nuance. It takes all of what they've said about being purposeful and intentional. I wish this was 90 minutes, a couple hours. I want to thank you. Yeah, I know you will, because people will ask for you back. I want to thank you, all three of you, so very, very much for giving us your time. Joseph has dropped in a link for the obligatory survey. Please do that for us. It's very, very quick for those that you who have joined, and send it along. Thank you. Have a great, great holiday weekend. Let's remember what the day is for. Thank you.
And thank you, Doug, for giving us an opportunity to come and talk with you and all you folks, and to spread the word about what we're doing. And we're also available, you know, you saw our contact information, it'll be in the slides. Feel free to contact any one of us. We'd be glad to talk to you. As you can see, we don't have a shortage of words.
We're not shy.
Thank you again, Doug.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Sue Babin.
Bye, Doug. I'll be in touch.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Yes, thank
See you
you.
later.
Bye.
Bye.